Hello and welcome to another episode of the Forward Unto Dawn podcast. I'm David, and I'm joined by our usual co-hosts, Dani,
Yoo-hoo!
And Isaac.
Hello.
It's been a while since our last episode, and so we're just gonna kind of catch up with some stuff that's been going on. New tidbits of fiction that's been released. Nothing big has come out yet, but there's still some little things to talk about. You want to start with Halo 5 first?
Yeah, that was the oldest bit of news, I guess.
So, really late to the party, they showed a trailer for Halo 5, or more accurately, Halo on the Xbox One. And basically all we know about it is that it's going to be 60 frames per second on the next-gen console, and they gave us a short teaser trailer, which everyone has dissected and come up with their own theories for. It seems like the most prominent one is that the Master Chief is going to hunt down Mendicant Bias.
Right, and that was from the end, or not the end, the epilogue of Silentium, correct?
Yeah, that combined with the epilogue of Silentium, which actually I don't think our Silentium podcast covered because the epilogue was audio only and it came out later. But basically the epilogue has Mendicant Bias basically being buried under the sand in the Ark. And then this teaser trailer has the Master Chief going across sand, and then something rises out of the sand.
Wow, you think they are connected?
I mean, there's people saying that the background looks like the Ark. I personally can't see it. And then,
Wouldn't it not be like the Ark after an explosion?
well, yeah, I think that's the intimation that this is the ruined Ark.
The same
they're
Ark
following.
that apparently one of the books we visited very briefly, saying that there was activity.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dots. That's a lot of dots, you know?
I personally don't buy it just because I'm not sure why you would bury Mendicant Bias with a
Why
war
not?
sphinxy kind of thing.
Why not? You know?
Which I guess is actually another supposition. Everyone's another, I don't know if they have to connect to the Mendicant Bias thing, but everyone's saying that it's a war sphinx coming out.
It doesn't look quite like the War Sphinxes were described. It could be like a similar sort of vehicle.
War machine of something.
Yeah, exactly.
It does also seem a little more, I don't know, bird-like than the Sphinxes, which sounded a lot more solid terrestrial.
Yeah, the Sphinxes had. Well, no, I guess the thing in the desert did have legs. Like, that's the cool thing. If you actually look at the structure of it, it's got these like tentacle-like things that hang down, which we've only ever seen something like that from a Forerunner construct in it was Bloodlines. Those little gathering things at the mine installation. I obviously connected, it seemed like kind of a Cthulhu call out to me, but that's just a personal connection. I think what's interesting actually about the Ark theory is that if you go back to Halo Legends, Origins Part 2, I always thought, and I probably mentioned this in a podcast before, they broke down the whole of Origins into past, present, and future. So they had the Forerunners in the past, the humans in the Covenant in the contemporary present, and then they showed a bunch of stuff that made absolutely no sense at the time. And I was expecting that a lot of those things would come to be in Halo 4, and they didn't. And now we've got people theorizing that Master Chief is going to go back to the Ark, and obviously he's doing something. He's looking for Cortana for some reason. And in Legends, we see a clip of the Gravemind handing Cortana's holochip to Chief, and then him immediately teleporting to the Ark. And the Ark is burnt up from the explosions and the Halo being fired so close to it.
No offense, but I think you're giving them far too much credit. That requires so much forward planning. But
you said the same thing when I said that Guilty Spark was a human, so that's cool.
Oh, you pulled that out of your bum and got lucky, and you know you did.
Okay, I guess you know better than I do.
I mean, it would be nice. I mean, considering Halo Legends was so frustrating for some of those reasons, it would be nice if they actually did tie it in, and it would be I mean, I kind of share Danny's skepticism just because, I mean, Legends came out when?
That was
Now 2009.
Was it 9 or 10? I think it was 10.
So February 2010. So 2009, you had to have. I mean, basically Frank. It sounds like Frank was responsible for.
Just remember that at one point he said, "We know how our story is going to start, and we know how it's going to end." So they have the major beats planned out. We know that already.
Master Chief dies. There you go. There's the end. Universe is forever safe.
There's always more games to make. The universe will never be safe.
No, I don't. No, nothing from the quote unquote future section of Origins ever really came to be. So there's like nothing from Halo 4 in there, and I wouldn't be surprised if Halo 5 had nothing to do with that. But it's just an interesting connection, and I'm still so intrigued by that scene of the Gravemind handing Chief Cortana's chip that I want to see something like that, swapping of.
So the Chief may get the idea in his head. Well, the Floods tried to assimilate her. What if it was partially right, and the only way to get her back is to go to the Flood, and then get the Flood to basically imprint a fresh Cortana into the chip.
Just remember that in Halo 2, after the Gravemind was introduced, you were technically working with the Flood, and in Halo 3, you fought alongside the Flood. So there's no reason that roles can't.
Until they decided it was pet food time. Yeah, and they were only fighting alongside you for some reason. They aren't going to give you.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're gonna go that route,
you aren't best buds.
There's dramatic tension to have where both know that the other person's going to betray him as soon as possible, but they still have to work together for a common goal.
Yeah, but how does that equal, say, Gravemind going, "Here, Chief, you want a Cortana clone? There you go. Stick that in your neck."
Well, I mean, we don't even know. That's who says it's cloning. Who says? I mean, we obviously know that the Gravemind can affect AIs in some degree.
Maybe when Cortana was on the ship, when it was on the Didax ship, she uploaded herself to the domain, and then I remember some people were throwing around theories that because the domain was precursor, it had some connection to the Flood. That the Flood was in some way connected to the domain. So you could make that connection. That's a stretch, but the connections, the threads are there.
Well, I do think the domain is the key to the franchise. I'll say, which is a wee bit more higher up than I usually go with my own personal theories. But no, I definitely think you're onto something. I don't know how solid the points that you're grabbing are at this moment in time. But I'm going on, say, human weakness. The Cortana story, and whenever she was with the Gravemind, there was nothing really there. There should have been something there to indicate, say, the Gravemind could literally make a copy of her or whatever. Any sort of thing like that. It's never really been explored or said or hinted at.
The Gravemind is also theoretically a precursor, and given what we know about the precursor's capabilities.
True.
Well, but the other question is exactly how much of the domain is around, because I don't think that the domain terminal's name was kind of just thrown out. There are terminals in the domain, but they did also make a big point of having the domain theoretically get obliterated by activating the Halo array at the end of Silentium.
Mm-hmm. But that was never confirmed that it was
it was actually destroyed. But it was the intimation was that
Guilty Spark did confirm it was silent from his point of view in his attempts to contact and reconnect to the domain. So there is that as well. That's
kind of cool. That could be your indication. As soon as the Halo array is fired, and the Halo array was designed to wipe out Flood, so as soon as the Flood were destroyed, the domain goes quiet.
So, but then the question is, well, then you have to place that part of we're talking about the Combat Evolved Anniversary terminals. Then you have to say, but that's where he says they've lost contact with the domain.
No, that's where he mentions all connections to his former station, I think. Oh no, you're right, because that's when he speaks with Abject Testament.
Yeah, so basically we don't really have a time frame, but that's saying that they all got distributed after the Halo event happened.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, isn't necessarily weird. Okay, now I'm confusing Legends and Anniversary. Do they actually show No, they show a portal, and then through that you see the Halo.
Yeah.
So the Halos were already stationed. I guess that's not an issue.
Although at the beginning of the second terminal, they're just floating around.
Oh yeah, they're all just floating there. Yeah, and then there's also the Life Worker. We know some of them at least survived the Halo.
Yeah.
So you can't really say one way or another.
Again, it's an interesting connection. We've got Mendicant Bias, we've got the potential for the Flood to be connected to the Domain, which is then connected to Cortana. And then if you look at Origins, like, there's a lot of... Chief goes to the Ark. Chief gets Cortana from the Gravemind. I mean, there's some interesting connections there.
If they were going to go back to the Ark, you kind of wonder why they made a greater Ark.
Yeah, and I'm wondering still why we haven't seen that anywhere, even in like
the Greater Ark was destroyed. That's the one that houses and facilitates the bigger Halos. That one was destroyed.
Oh yeah, that's right. I've only read each of those books once. Still, I really need to go back and reread those ones. Yeah, it was their final flight, like right before the Halos were fired, and it was destroyed. Then they had to go to the Lesser Ark.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Danny actually remembered that before us. Whoa.
Well, I do.
Always surprising.
I do have some moments, you know.
There's so many details in the Forerunner trilogy that it's hard to remember all of them.
I know. That's one thing I like about it. Every time you go back and read about something, you go, I missed that one wee thing that I went through it the first time, or I missed that wee thing.
In March, we haven't had a podcast since then, and now we're already back to talking about Silentium. That's how much cool stuff that book has in it.
Also, that we just can't remember what we talked about in March. Focus. Isaac.
What do you guys think about the fact that Chief seems to be on his own? His armor hasn't been repaired, and he's got, obviously, the much-discussed cloak.
Stupid. Chief couldn't be anywhere without an army of technicians maintaining that. That was the whole thing about him being a big dude and a big tank. It takes an army of technicians to keep going over any period of time. And he's like, throw Poncho, I'll just rough it out. And
could be just a sense of misdirection where, I mean, it worked. Like, people were like, oh man, what is this? It's like a new IP. And like, oh, whoa, it's Halo. Like,
so the in-universe explanation for Chief wearing a poncho is... What?
You're talking just from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, but also just in terms of...
I'm asking about what's the in-universe explanation? Just give me a simple one sentence. Why is Chief wearing poncho? He's wearing a poncho because...
his armor's damaged in some way.
And the poncho is protecting the armor in the ways only a poncho can.
The best theory I heard was that it's to the... Obviously, like, sensors would be able to punch through a layer of cloth pretty easily, but, like, the best theory that I heard was that it's just to visually, like, disguise him, so from a distance no one would know he was a Spartan, no one would know, theoretically, that he was human.
It's a pity he's not, like, 8 feet tall.
Well, there's plenty of taller aliens out there.
And where do you get ponchos that size? Who makes ponchos to fit over Spartan armor? And where do ponchos are us don't sell them?
You're a Spartan, you just grab it from, like, the nearest place. And then just make yourself a poncho.
Was there a space?
They were trained to survive in the field for like months at a time. So
is poncho training a part of that?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
clothing,
survival training,
maintenance, and yeah, exactly.
Did he grab it off the poncho trees?
You know what, Danny? It's a Forerunner poncho because he's on the Ark and he just grabbed it.
It's a ready supply of Forerunner ponchos.
That's a visual check for a trailer, and that makes no fucking sense in the universe at all.
Well, but all right, Danny, look at it this way. Like, yeah, it doesn't have to make sense to us now because if you look at no, think about it this way. Think about it this way, Danny. Like, all the trailers we got for Halo games were always taking, I wouldn't say in media res, but they always took place at some point in the game. There are few that actually start, oh, and here I'm setting things up. So it could be this is a third or half of the way through the game, and it's not going to make sense until we get to that point.
If that chapter's not called Poncho, I'll be very disappointed.
I mean, it's like everyone was freaking out because they fired off the Ark in the Halo 3 trailer, and then you find out it's actually just a portal to the Ark, and there's a whole... the meatiest chunk of the game is after that bit.
I'm not even implying that Poncho Chief is the meat of the game. I don't know where you're going, what road you're going down with this, but
No, I'm
not
talking about the
together.
whole meeting the giant thing in the sand. You're fixated on the poncho. I'm looking
I am.
bigger picture.
I am. I'm fixated on the Poncho. At some point after the chief has got to where he is, they need to explain how he got to where he is. They're not going to do a Halo Uprising comic where they'll explain later, wink, and then don't, and then do, but it's like too much later. Was it Uprising we did that with Bungie?
Yeah, Uprising.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they're going to do an Uprising ever again. Ever. So, yeah, it's probably going to be gameplay explains how you get there, maybe. Cutscenes.
Actually, that would be a pretty masterful. I don't think they would ever do it, but it'd be a pretty masterful troll if that is the end of the game. It'll make sense to you. You're like, oh my god, and then
mean thing to do.
Cliffhanger. If they did that to Halo 5, that would be like total punch in the gut. Like, yeah, just messing with you.
Well, see what I find curious about the announcement, right? E3, what they're going to do with Halo for E3. And what they did was that lovely trailer, nice trailer. I admit, but what I think was curious was the fact that before they had their main E3, they had like a little media briefing. It was just TV. And didn't they announce like a Halo TV thing?
Well, you gotta, I mean, that's just... It's kind of weird because if you think about it, it's all the sort of awkward timing where we're getting to the next console and there's not a Halo for it. It's all just going back to Halo 2.
But there is a
because...
Halo. You know, we have a Halo. We have
no,
a Halo
but I'm saying in terms of
Halo...
way back in 2002 or whatever, Microsoft wanted Bungie to get Halo 2 out the gate by 2003, so 2005 when the new Xbox 360 launched, there would be a Halo on it. That didn't happen, and so we've kind of been off kilter ever since.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know what drove Halo? You know what drove the 360 at the start? You know what the killer app was for the 360 when it launched?
Cameo.
No, it was Halo 2.
No. But actually, we should talk about.
I just felt that was so weird.
Danny's going off on Microsoft, which is unrelated.
We should talk about the. But I'm just saying, it's so weird.
The only thing that I got from the announcement was that they were not far enough in the development of the game to have enough solid stuff to announce, but they still had to have a presence at E3 for marketing. So yeah, they came out with everything they could guarantee, absolutely, 100%, which wasn't much.
What about Spielberg in your Halo?
I was actually just talking to a film graduate today who's currently working with Warner Brothers on one of their new sci-fi projects, and he was talking about how Spielberg in particular as a director, he told me that on a project that Spielberg was a producer of, it's been like reported that he tends to get behind the camera anyway and like get really involved with the filming of the project. So he says that within the filming community, if you see Spielberg's name on something, you can usually assume that he's taking a little more initiative than that title suggests. So if he's producer, then he's also doing a little bit of directing work from time to time. If he's executive producer, then he's doing a little bit of straight producing work from time to time. So his involvement might be a little more direct because of how he personally approaches projects. And yeah, like I haven't seen I can't remember a Spielberg project that his name was attached to that was terrible, that ended up being bad. Yeah, it might not have been Spielberg quality, but never any bad productions.
See, my disclaimer to you when it comes to this project, if I hear the name Palmer, I'm not watching it.
I doubt they would, in part because there's the voice actor stuff, partly because I don't think they would launch a Halo series without trying to strike into a new area that they can have a little more creative control for, etc., etc. But I do think, I hope it could be, like you say, like Spielberg could be more involved, or he could just be bankrolling it because it's got cachet. But either way, I am 100% behind Spielberg being related to Halo compared to Blomkamp, because I think Spielberg, naturally, everything about his style fits with Halo much, much more. Well,
the thing is, he's very good at the human element, and obviously every single time that he does anything that's like battle or war related, he captures the essence of war perfectly.
I think Spielberg visually captures fantasy and sci-fi elements a lot better than Blomkamp. Like, he's already military gritty sort of stuff, but Spielberg will just do whatever and film whatever it needs to be.
I think you can compare districts. I always confuse myself. Is it District 9?
Yeah.
Okay, District 9. I always want to say it's District 11. But just compare District 9 to Saving Private Ryan in terms of the action sequences. And yeah, like Saving Private...
Or Elysium, because Elysium is even more...
Yeah, Saving Private Ryan, it pioneered the high shutter speed, choppy look with like boots on the ground. But even there, like the shaky cam is nothing compared to the shaky cam and bizarre angles, like gun's eye view that you get in those movies. So it's definitely...
But there was a certain quality and tone to every frame of Saving Private Ryan that's absent.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Like, and it was before digital color grading too, which what makes it so amazing.
Look at District 9. It's brown.
Well, that's after color grading.
He aims to achieve a different kind of sci-fi feel. He aims to achieve a very real, very gritty...
Well, I know, I get it. I get what he's going for, but I don't like it. It's very hard to pull off. I think the only very, very gritty, down to earth sci-fi that I've seen that really pulled off that look was Children of Man.
You didn't like District 9 for its...
No.
Well, I think I liked District 9 for what it was. I mean, the apartheid thing was a little heavy-handed. I'm not sure why an advanced alien race would make every single one of their guns turn people into Gibbs.
No, that was the liquid.
No. How all their weapons explode people.
Oh.
I'm just not sure what the practicality of that kind of weapon is. But I mean, and I like District 9 for what it was, but it's just when you say, all right, I want this look on Halo, heck no.
Well, we've already seen that. Because Neil Blomkamp obviously did the band shorts.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it was fine for a short piece because we were all hyped up on Halo 3 coming out, but there's no way I would want to see, because there's nothing...
Feature film Landfall, basically.
Yeah, there's no cinematography or any sort of link between what you see in Halo and what Blomkamp seems most interested in.
Yeah.
And Halo has to be big. It has to be bombastic. It has to be colorful. It has to assault the senses. You know?
Well, yeah, and even Reach would have a comparatively drab palette, and the effort to go through they went to justify the camera and scenes. It's still nowhere near the level of grit that Blomkamp brings.
Yeah, I'm most excited by Spielberg's involvement for the potential he has to, again, portray the human element and just kind of get this, like if you look at Band of Brothers in the Pacific, though both of those shows do such a good job at focusing on the human perspective and the relationships between people. Like, I imagine if this show is going to focus on I see obviously no reason why it wouldn't focus on a constant like cast of characters who have a singular story throughout the whole thing. They're probably going to do like a squad of soldiers, and that's already perfect for Spielberg. I mean, he knows how to pull that off and get you involved with the characters who are going through life and death situations. It's going to be perfect for Halo if that's the route they go.
Question, do you think, because this will tie into stuff we talk about later, do you think they would, since Spielberg's involved, it would be like Hollywood or television writer, or do you think it would be someone already involved in 343 writing?
Brian Reed.
Yeah, actually, if he can get his hands on it, I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, I'm sure he would have some input, just the same way that Frankie did on like Legends.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it going either way. I mean,
I think just because Spielberg would be involved, it would be more. It's more on his terms.
Yeah,
so
but
I
also
imagine
see
it would be
Spielberg
more
getting involved because he has an interest in this other media. Because we know that from after he did Saving Private Ryan, he got involved mildly with the Medal of Honor series, which he kind of helped get off the ground.
See, if Spielberg has any sense, he would get Mr. Vociferous to come in and be his personal story advisor for the entire project.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That 343 is going to be that involved anyhow.
Yeah, and he's probably not very aware of that kind of.
I'm just saying, if we're talking about dream things,
Yeah, I don't think anybody would disagree.
to make it perfect, that's how I would imagine something being perfect, because then you'd be guaranteed it will work story-wise.
I just want to see more. We've literally had nothing. We know there is a Halo television series. We know Steven Spielberg is executive producing it, and we know he's had negotiations with Halo in the past, and that's it. We don't know a thing about the story. We don't know a thing about the look.
Yeah, let's just hope they do Halo Chronicles.
They wouldn't have announced it. Spielberg wouldn't have, I don't think, gone for it if it hadn't actually been a done deal, essentially. I mean, like, the thing about Halo Chronicles is it's probably a good thing it got axed because we got
ODST.
Because it was one of those interactive story kind of things where I wasn't sure how it was going to work, and because it got axed, we got ODST. So I think it worked out as a win for us. But I don't know. When do you think we'll actually see something, though? Because it is so... I mean...
2 years.
3 years?
2 years.
I could see it in 2 years.
I'm not sure, because, I mean, obviously it has to be some time frame between... They've started production, which they obviously have not started yet, and we just ink the deal, hey, talk about it on screen. And I feel like it has to be somewhere between there.
Well, are you doing a pilot? Are you pitching it to a network? Well, how is it going to be syndicated? How is it going to be run? What's, you know what I mean? Like Microsoft are dicks when it comes to their property. And when I say they're dicks, I mean they're protective dicks. They don't want anyone over it making the decisions. They don't want some network saying, well, in this scene we want Audi. They don't care. Put Audi in. They pay us our money. Put Audi sponsorship in there, yeah.
I assume what it's going to work, because it's going to be on the Xbox One, is that it'll be like Netflix original series, basically.
That's how I understood it.
So it's not really a TV series, but it is a TV series.
And I mean, and they're trying to get people sold on which is actually interesting. I mean, we're going to can't digress into Microsoft's plans for the future or whatever, but that they are trying to push it as TV to the rest of the people, where like you don't think of Netflix as TV, even though Netflix is obviously trying to push it that way. So I think that's just their part of their branding to sort of push it more that direction.
I'm just worried about the budget. Then, if that's the case, well, look at Netflix's original programming. I think the existence of that is mind-numbingly awesome. The fact that they said "F you" to the traditional network model and said, "Here, we'll just pay for this content to exist and let people watch it." Fantastic. It's not scalable, I don't think. But if that's what Halo is, Halo's not going to have that even with Netflix or budget, because it's Microsoft. Advertisers won't touch it because there's nothing to advertise. You know what I mean? You can't stick adverts in it. It'd be difficult to stick adverts around it because it's for a Microsoft property. You're basically selling Halo with it. It is an advertising tool in itself.
That's the other thing. If Spielberg's producing it, theoretically, some sort of financial support is coming from his direction.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, where is this money coming from? Like, you don't spend money for no reason. You want a return on that money. That's how these people work. So, where's the return?
Well, I assume it's one of those things. If you get enough of it, you can syndicate it out. So once it's after a first run, like maybe a year down the line, they'll sell it off to Netflix or whoever, and then DVDs and whatnot. Which, I mean, from the standpoint of Forward Unto Dawn, it did phenomenally successful, and that was on a comparatively shoestring budget. So
yeah, I keep getting flashbacks to that, thinking, well, that was a web series, and it was terribly budgeted. I mean, my God, but they did fantastic for a web show.
Forward Unto Dawn, or are you talking about something else?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Forward Unto Dawn, I didn't think about it as a web series because they did such a good job with it. I thought, I mean, it's less than TV show, obviously, but greater than web series.
Yeah, they managed to make it look better than it was, which was astounding. But is that what we get for the TV series? As long as it's not quite TV series level, but they sort of improved it to that point.
It's going to be better just because Microsoft wants to headline the... I mean, it's probably the same thing like... I mean, House of Cards, probably in terms of amount of money they're throwing at it versus how much... I don't think it's making its money back in terms of people are, oh man, I need to subscribe to Netflix so I can watch House of Cards. But it's I want to subscribe to Netflix because they've got all these awesome shows and they've got this track record behind it. So they're going to put the money into it because I assume since they've announced it first, Halo is going to be one of the first.
Like, House of Cards is an idea. that you're selling a service rather than the show, but that's similar to Halo then.
So moving on from things that are totally old news, this summer out came a couple of smaller fiction-wise, but we got Spartan Assault in the summer, which is now out on all platforms and has an update, so you can play it with your 360 controller on your computer or whatnot, which, Danny, you have not played.
I have not played it because
I've played it.
they've decided I am not good enough to play their game because I don't own the right software or OS.
But to be fair,
well, to get that out of the way, odds on it eventually ending up on Xbox Live Arcade or Xbox Live or Xbox One.
If the sales aren't good enough on the Windows platforms, which is likely, then yeah, I see them going to.
Well, all right. It's the top, according to the press release for the new DLC, it's the top paid Windows app and has been since it came out. So it's doing decently. It's just the issue of, obviously, the Windows ecosystem is not the iOS or even the Android. So good, really good in that context is probably middling compared to others. Always going to come out with, I think they're going to come out with it on maybe Xbox One, just because, I mean, it requires 2 gigs of RAM or something like that. I don't imagine they would cut it down to fit onto the Xbox 360.
So what's it like? I'm not allowed to play it, so I'm not good enough to play it. Who's played it?
We've played it. Have you beaten it, Isaac?
Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it felt to me, especially since a lot of the assets and stuff pull more from sort of Halo Reach and Halo 3, that it feels a lot like you just took Halo Wars and then zoomed in a little closer and took individual control.
Yeah, exactly. It's Halo Wars, but where you command one person and you get more control over where you go in the environment and how you fight.
That sounds absolutely terrible.
But it's not. That's the thing.
Halo Wars was fun, and this was fun too.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing Spartan Assault. In fact, I felt that it was
trying
short.
to be sarcastic, by the way.
I know. Well, no, I didn't know, but it's hard to tell with you sometimes. My only complaint with, I'll buy it eventually once it probably comes to arcade, or there won't be arcade on the Xbox One, but once it comes to the Xbox One, because I am putting money down that it will by in a year or so, probably less than that. My only complaint was that they've got these really awesome. I know some people were complaining that the cutscenes were done in the motion graphic style by Sequence. I know a lot of people who really like that too, though, especially people who were playing cell phone games weren't amazed that you could get this on a phone. But there just wasn't that much story in it, which I thought was kind of a shame.
Yeah, but then again, none of us have played the new one, and I won't expect it to have much more story, but it's kind of like, I see it kind of like Spartan Ops. Like, there wasn't much story in the first half of Spartan Ops, and now the second half was packed with much more content. There's room for them to grow, obviously. They got this one out pretty quickly, so I doubt there's going to be that much in it, but it's easier to put out updates for this, and so I see them taking a little bit more time with future updates and then putting more story and more gameplay content into it.
I mean, it's actually, in terms of if you were going to introduce someone to, like, sort of what Halo's about, this is kind of like all the paint by numbers. Like, you've got the Covenant, they invade. Oh man, this actually turns out to be a Forerunner installation. Oh man, it's kind of a weapon. We got to stop that.
Yeah, it is literally only on the surface level as far as the story goes.
It's basically like if you had to pick 2 tropes, like for stories, there's like Oni are the evil guys and Forerunner, Covenant discover Forerunner weapon, we have to destroy it. It's kind of like your basic 2.
Or the Flood.
I mean, even the Flood isn't used as much because, I mean, we'll get to it later, but you can list the whole bunch of basic Covenant discover alien artifact, we have to blow it up stories.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty stock. I mean, not saying they're bad, but they're a pretty recognizable feature.
Yeah, and I think the question is, at what point does it become too ridiculous, like how many times humans have found and blown up Forerunner structures?
I think it depends on execution. I mean, the number of times shuttlecraft have crashed in Star Trek, and there's been a plot about rescuing them or whatnot is kind of ridiculous. But all right, well, most of them were bad, but that's partly because they just started doing it over the top in Voyager. But you can still get dramatically different stories out of it. So I don't think it's kind of nice not to have them rely on those tropes, but the tropes themselves don't mean the story's bad or not. And here it's perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing that I got 2 story points out of Spartan Assault that I found to be relevant to the larger context of Halo. First of all, we know the Forerunner can build like planets, artificial planets, and stuff larger than planets, obviously. But looking at Onyx, they built an artificial planet, and so an artificial moon isn't too much of a stretch. But it's cool knowing that they made a moon or a device capable of orbiting a planet with the intention of destroying it, because you can immediately see that that was made for the Flood. That they could place these small moons around planets that were susceptible to the Flood or that might have reported a Flood infection or something, and then if they detect that it is there, just blow up the planet.
Well, and it's even, I mean, you hear so much about how they burn star systems and just sort of torched places to prevent the Flood from going somewhere. How do we know that they didn't use it primarily via these moons or whatever? Like, who knows what the range of them is?
Yeah, so it does add a little bit more interesting devices to the Forerunner's arsenal, but
So these small moons that destroy planets sound familiar.
yeah, it's obvious where they got the inspiration for that. But disregarding other long-standing franchises, solely looking at Halo, it's interesting.
What was the second point?
During the loading screens, they have quotes from a lot of the characters and Spartans.
Oh yeah, I really like that.
I liked it too. I noticed that they randomized sometimes, which makes it difficult for the folks over at Halopedia. But I also one of them in particular stood out to me because they had a Spartan actually talking about the Spartan Ops or the War Games simulation. How when he was in the simulation, he could smell the diesel from the Scorpion tank or something. He could smell the fumes from the engine running, and how he was just amazed at how realistic it was and didn't understand how they managed to make it that realistic, which is kind of like a meta commentary on people playing multiplayer who are into the fiction and are wondering how the heck this simulation works. So it was almost like a joke. When you play multiplayer, you play as a Spartan and you don't understand how the war games work. So the Spartans also don't understand how war games works.
343 does like their in-jokes. I mean, that was the whole like back half of Spartan Ops, basically. Like, yeah, all right, we admit we did some stupid stuff, but at least we'll hang a lantern on it.
Yeah.
My question, I was not sure about. So the Covenant have cloaking devices?
Active camo?
But enough to cover an entire ship.
Well, they did
Is
with
that
the
new?
Long Night of Solace in Reach.
Yeah, I guess. I didn't know if that was because of the pylons or not.
No, the pylons were oh yeah, you're right. I think it was. The pylons were teleporters, but they were also cloaking.
Yeah. Teleporters linked to what? Okay, but in the beginning of the when Roland's laying down what happened at Dratheus 5, they have these Covenant cruisers and supercarrier warp in, and then they have a tight shot of 2 cruisers just fading in. Like Star Trek style turbulent displace kind of warp in. Or not warp in, but
Romulan.
sort of ripple in. Yeah.
Like the cloaking
Basically the
device
Romulan
sort of
effect.
thing.
Yeah.
I never even caught that or noticed it when I saw it.
So I guess they do have cloaking devices. Although I guess you don't know if they're the 150 millimeter tiny cruisers.
Well, if they had green lights, then they were the CSV.
I have to double check that, but that was the main thing. So wait a second.
I'll have to watch that again.
Okay. Anything else to say about Spartan Assault?
The backdrops. I want to say skyboxes, but I don't even think they count as skyboxes with the way it's made. But the backgrounds for each level are amazing. Like if you wander over to the side of the actual playable area and look over the edge, because it's still a top down, but to give the illusion of like even more depth. Like it's not it's a top down in the sense of the gameplay, I think.
Yeah, but I know you're talking about like there's the parallax on the ground or whatever on cliffs and stuff. So
yeah, and they do a really cool like effect with having actual battles going on in the distance / underneath you.
Yeah, and then the thing I forgot about is, I mean, I guess it's probably just simple to like rip the assets or something, but I'm so happy we basically saw every Halo Wars vehicle back.
Well, a lot
you
of
got
them.
the Grizzlies, you got the Grizzlies, you got the Wolverines.
Was there?
I guess you didn't get the. I feel like you got a Hawk at one point, or maybe they were just mentioned.
Maybe. Well, no, don't they fly over at one? No, there's Hornets. The Hornets are the.
Well, yeah, there's Hornets, which I mean, we're always better than the Falcon. There's no arguing about that.
There's every arguing about that.
No, not at all.
I hated having to look up to fly up. That's the only thing.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, they were hard to control, but they just felt so much more futuristic than just like a rotor copter.
As far as playing.
All right, well, fine. Me.
There wasn't, I don't think there was a gremlin.
Yeah, there weren't gremlins or cobras. Well, gremlins were always like an EMP on the back of a flatbed truck. They weren't that interesting.
Well, there's a lot of vehicles that didn't show up. But yeah, having them all mixed together, that's the thing that I've loved so much about 343 is how they're bringing all of the canon and all of the expanded universe into each individual product that they make now.
Well, so you had Halo Reach like weapons. I wasn't sure, at least in the intermission stills, they're Halo 3 elites. I couldn't really tell if they were directly modeled on them in the game.
It almost looked like Halo 1 elites, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Just the way they move.
Yeah.
Like they've got that bend and run.
Even when they were running, they were all hunched over like the Halo 1 elites.
Which actually was like massive nostalgia boost.
Yeah.
Because they did really feel like Halo 1 elites to me. I'm glad I wasn't the only person.
Yeah.
Halo 3 assault weapons.
And then drones that make engineer sounds. That bugged me, but whatever.
It happened.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of a nice mishmash.
Now we just need to get them to actually introduce some new fiction in Spartan Assault, and I'll be really happy.
Yeah, I mean that's all. I think it's such a competent shooter in other ways. Like they could just add more fiction and it wouldn't hurt it. And we can move on to the other small piece of fiction that's dropped, or at least it's small now, because the first issue of Halo Initiation.
Yeah, which I personally didn't want to talk about until we had the full story, because...
Well, yeah, I mean, we can...
Well, there's not much to talk about.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, it's a short... It's a... Oh, you haven't read it?
I haven't read it.
I mean, it's short, it sets things up, It's
nothing. The first issue is nothing.
I mean, the biggest thing everyone got out of it was 343 confirmed that June made it off Reach, which I know some people were upset because Levi had him die.
It's so interesting hearing that after doing our interview with Levi, and then of course transcribing the interview with Levi and hearing it again. All the decision making that he had to go through with how to end June's story and whether to continue it or not, and now 343 has done that.
And I think, like, in terms of, I doubt, honestly, he's probably going to pop up much more. But it was a nice place to stick him.
It feels kind of like they were throwing him in there to say, like, hey, remember that character that you liked? Well, he personally vouched for this character that you don't like.
I mean, that's the cynical, Dani-like way of looking at it. I think it was more fan service.
That's really
I think it was more just fan service in the terms of, here's this character, people really want to know what happened to him. Here's a place where he can logically fit in.
I think they're trying to put Palmer or the Spartan 4s like on a more parallel line with the other Spartans. Like obviously they're highlighting a lot of the downsides of the Spartan 4s, but you're supposed to also feel like they are as capable as the other Spartans.
Well, they do actually. I mean, I think they're going to do that. I mean, it's obviously some prediction, but I think they're going to do that with Palmer in this one. I mean, they had a good... I mean, mostly it's setting things up and a battle scene, and then June shows up, and that's all that's in this issue. So it's really is just dropping it for the next two issues.
Don't forget they established that she's a badass, and she likes being a badass.
I think they did actually... Honestly, I mean, Brian Reed wrote this one, so he's the franchise writer, so he didn't write Halo 4, but I don't know how involved he was
in how much of Spartan Ops he wrote, but I think he did a better job at characterizing Palmer in this one. She actually kind of comes off as the closest analog I can find in these battle sequences. She comes off like Spider-Man.
I like Spider-Man, and I don't like Bomber, so I'm going to disagree.
But she's got this sort of dry, like, banter that she's doing while she's in a critical situation, which I personally enjoyed.
That's military fantasism.
It's too much of a comic book trope to put into something like Halo.
I don't think it comes off. I mean,
you want more bullets? Bang, bang, bang. Here, have some. Bang, bang.
It wasn't that. I mean, that's like bravado, like come get some. There was less of that. Plus, she uses a grenade to overturn a warthog, which I thought was a nice touch.
Does it blow up, or was it the Halo 1 indestructible warthog?
It gets a little rough or rare, but it's mostly indestructible. It was a nice gameplay touch.
See, I like that, but I just well, I can't talk about it too much because I haven't read it. But
also, can I say one thing in particular about the comic? I think it's important that this is noted. Is the fact that comic art is fully. It's so bland, poorly drawn in there.
Well, it got me. I noticed, like, oh, well, they've got the Halo 3 brutes, like, yay, and like their Halo 3 armor and stuff, and they've got the Halo 4 emblem. This is interesting. I was just comparing. They've got some Halo 4 style frigates, and then they have pretty much one of the few close-up shots of a grunt they have. It's a Halo 4 grunt, which bothered me, because it's like, well, why is it a Halo 4 grunt? And then it also really bothered me because I realized that it's pretty much ripped off from one of the, I think one of the Game Informer screenshots of like a grunt getting thrown by an explosion, which is not really anything new. Because if you go back to Second Sunrise over New Mombasa, there's the artist literally, I mean, he could have just traced over concept sketches of the elites from Combat Evolved. That's why they look so weird.
Well, also that was just Mobius and his art style.
Yeah, but he literally looked at an elite and then drew the exact same elite.
Well, it's like the Fall of Reach comics having the Deep Space Nine space station. You know, like they've got to get references because they need to do art faster than they normally would. I mean, it's understandable why that stuff happens in comics.
I mean, overall, I think it's one of the better comic art we've gotten in terms of Halo, because we've gotten Uprising, which was generally sort of messy, and I think just was hard to read. And
there was a lot of digitally just like slightly altered pictures to make it look more like a comic, which just didn't work.
Yeah,
like the backgrounds especially.
Yeah, and then there was a whole different set of styles in Halo graphic novels, so it's kind of hard to talk about. But there was some beautiful stuff in there, and then some kind of lousy stuff too. Then there was Bloodlines, which is,
I don't remember which order they came out in, but I like the style.
Bloodlines came after Helljumper, but Helljumper I think is probably the best overall art. Bloodlines is, if you're talking about that comic book feeling,
yeah, it definitely had that, but it was still solid art. You know, I liked it for its clarity, if not its feeling. Yeah, Helljumper was really good. I think
Helljumper, another example of the found a Forerunner artifact, now we had to blow it up.
I liked, I feel like I'm missing a comic, but I liked the Fall of Reach series. All around, I liked what they did with it.
I actually haven't read them. I was really annoyed.
There's a lot of cool stuff they actually add. It's almost like Game of Thrones. Like, if you read the book series, Song of Ice and Fire, you understand the story, you go through, you follow the characters, and then you watch the show, and you realize that they add interactions between characters that just kind of help to flesh out what you already understand. And I feel like that's how the Fall of Reach comic series is. Like, they added scenes that actually support some of the data drops that they put out regarding Reach's intentional destruction. Yeah, so it's really cool that the comic series can kind of support some of the supplemental stuff that 343 has put out, like with the data drops. And they did all that stuff about Oni being somewhat responsible for Reach falling to explain some of the inconsistencies in canon, and the comics also support that by having some additional scenes of like Oni representatives intentionally destroying AIs that were going to report the fleet coming into Reach. Stuff that wasn't in the book at all. So there's cool little stuff like that, and then just seeing these things, seeing visually elements of the Halo fiction that have thus far only been in, like, they've been with us literally since before the first game came out, because the Fall of Rage came out before Halo 1, but we've never seen them until this comic series. So it's just cool to visualize stuff like that that's been around for so long. I was frustrated by the armors being changed. You know, they have instead of them all being the same Mark IV like Halo Wars armor, they all wear different armor sets, which bugged me. But again, it makes sense from a comic standpoint why you want to be able to differentiate each character. But I think it's great what they were doing with that. What were we talking about?
We were talking about comics in general.
Initiation. It feels like a step down from the art that I've seen.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And then but we're gonna I think right after Initiation wraps in October, I think we're gonna get Escalation, which sounds like it's a Halo 3 to Halo 4 bridge. That I think they specifically mentioned the Arbiter's going to be in it. And that one, Initiation is being written by Brian Reed. Escalation is being written by Halo 4's writer, who I totally have blanked on the name now.
I don't know.
4's writer, which is Chris Schlurf. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but it looks like Schlurf. Which that one sounds a lot more like it's going to be sort of jumping around. So personally, I'm more interested in that. But I think Initiation started off solid, and I hope that it builds.
And it seems like that's everything we have to talk about.
Yeah, so that about wraps up this episode then. I'm going to keep it a little shorter this time. You can leave us comments on this show's page on our website or a review on iTunes. Subscribe to us there, or you can also follow us on Twitter at ForwardDawn. And if you want to talk about anything, you can also engage us at our forums, assembly.forwarduntodawn.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.